Destiny 2 Lightfall harkens back to the old days of Destiny, but not in the way I wished. Having played through the expansion story, once on Legendary and once on Classic, it is safe to say that the story has left me disappointed and confused. Of course, spoilers for the Lightfall expansion ahead. I feel that should go without saying, but I will give the warning now. Please click off if you do not wish to be spoiled. Now I will continue. To start this, I think that it is ironic that they narratively stated that the heart of the Black Garden, which we destroyed in Destiny's vanilla story in 2014, was an attempt at recreating the Veil, because I cannot tell you what either of them truly are. The feeling, from a narrative point of view, made me feel like a lot like I did when I completed the story to the original game in 2014. Interesting premises were put forward, but never pushed. In Lightfall, far too much time is spent on Strand, and Strand didn't even feel like it belonged. Somehow, the expansion felt like one massive introduction to the new subclass, touching very little on actual story implications that I felt were interesting. The Cloud Striders didn't have enough actual expansion in my mind, as they received little characterization as an organization, and Rohan's death most certainly felt hollow. Obviously, we wouldn't have much of a connection with him, but there are times where Ghost seems overly distraught at the death of somebody we just knew, as if he was a member of the Vanguard or something. Besides a few lines from Nimbus right after it happened, they didn't seem to care much either, although there was some post-campaign quest stuff pertaining to the exotic light machine gun quest that you, again, received at the end of the campaign that alleviated that issue some. The biggest complaint across the player base is that the MacGuffin of the story had no elaboration. We saw the Veil, and still have no idea what it is. I've seen some wonderful fan theories, but they aren't really supported by anything, which is of no fault to the theorists. It's just that for an object that is the primary focus of the story, has been sprinkled with little vague mentions throughout the lore for the longest time. It was set up through the entirety of Season of the Seraph. Nothing was explained. What I've been telling people I've spoken to about the story, is that we enter the story for the campaign with the question, what is the Veil? And we exit the campaign with the question, what is the Veil? There is literally no further understanding we have of what this item was. We spent the entire campaign being told to protect it. Ironically, we actually figured out a little more about the MacGuffin item that we were sent to destroy in Destiny 1, and that is that the Heart of the Black Garden is an attempt by the Vex to recreate the Veil. Whatever that means. I understand that the concepts of the Destiny franchise are nebulous, as the light and dark are inherently abstract ideas. Strand and the Veil seem very nebulous. Osiris spends the entire campaign telling us that the darkness is when you think. Strand works better when we think and plan. It felt very odd and out of place. The pacing of Strand and learning it just sort of feels wrong, as we're supposed to be up against the clock the entire expansion, racing to protect the Veil from Callus. And yet, we have the time to go through a whole-ass Rocky-style training montage? And my hypothesis as to what happened is that Strand was originally intended to be gathered at the same time, or be the same as the Deep Sight system within Witch Queen. However, Bungie instead opted for the overhaul of the light subclasses that we ultimately got, and so that development of the new subclass was pushed back to Lightfall. Therefore, the narrative kind of got smashed around and blended to introduce this new power. The overall story felt so mediocre, and it actually disappointed me. For the longest time, I never expected a lot from Destiny content drops in terms of narrative quality in the actual story missions. Destiny had been hit or miss. However, Destiny's season, from Season of the Chosen onward, and even some seasons before that, such as Season of Arrivals, had phenomenal storytelling. And that carried into Witch Queen. Witch Queen was phenomenal from a story point of view. Bungie was consistently producing amazing story content for the past 2 years. And as I mentioned Season of Arrivals, that was probably one of my favorite times to play Destiny 2. I thought I was safe to trust Bungie's story team with producing high-quality narrative consistently. As I said, the last 2 years were so consistently good. Destiny 2 was in a place where I finally felt confident in saying that I played the game for the story and not the gameplay. I consistently told people that Destiny was in a state opposite of when it started, that the story, again, was better than the gameplay, and Lightfall has inverted it. As I said when I started my thoughts on this expansion, this reminds me of vanilla Destiny in 2014. The drive to play the game was the gameplay, not its narrative offerings, and that's how the Lightfall story feels. The campaign is phenomenal from a gameplay perspective, with very few issues. There are only a couple encounters that have me frustrated on Legendary. The Tormentors are fantastic mini-bosses, preferable in my opinion to the Hive Lightbearers, and most certainly better than Champions. Most of the environments were spectacular. The only encounter space I found myself disappointed in was the final boss, ironically. The last stand with Keitel outside the vault as well, prior to the final boss fight, was awesome. Fighting alongside allied AI definitely makes you feel more involved in the universe. The Guardian taking charge prior to the Strand training montage was also very nice to see, and the amount of dialogue that the Guardian got was also just absolutely great to see, as there were several expansions where we basically did not speak, if we spoke at all. Neo Muna, as a location, was also spectacular so far, with a lot of wonderful spaces and interesting lore. While I do think there's definitely a missed opportunity regarding the inhabitants of the city, I totally understand why Bungie did not opt to make civilian AI and involve them in a patrol space. The way they wrote them out of the area, being uploaded into a digital storage to be safe, is interesting, at least. Narratively, the game is currently building towards the return of Nezarec, the disciple of the Witness that was responsible for leading the Darkness forces during the collapse, and will be the raid boss of the Lightfall raid. Right now, my thoughts are that this game definitely needs a win, and the raid could be that. The slow build-up through patrol dialogue and the exotic LMG quest, Deterministic Chaos, definitely has me ready to hop into the day one raid. Of what we have seen of the raid from the little teasers that Bungie has produced, I am definitely excited, but again, I also said that about Lightfall, so my expectations are certainly tempered at this time. As of writing and now recording this on March 3rd, my faith in Bungie has certainly been rattled by this expansion. I'm not going anywhere. After all, I bought the deluxe edition of the expansion. It's 100 smackaroons that I spent. I gotta stick around at this point. However, I would have bet money on the narrative quality of the Lightfall expansion being out of this world, and that wasn't the case. All in all, I would say that I think this was simply just a bad time for Destiny to regress into its narrative quality, and I hope that the seasons in Raid can bolster and improve an otherwise lackluster narrative content release. This, again, reminds me of Destiny 1, but with some high-quality cinematics. The cinematics were fucking out of this world, insane, beautiful. It's just the story that was told through the cinematics wasn't the best, and I really hope that again, the raid and the seasons really bolster that and take us away from this kind of weird, confused, hollow feeling that I also had finishing vanilla Destiny 1. Because we certainly need it with the way the player base has reacted. We need a win with this game. Again, as I said, I'm not going anywhere. I plan to play. I plan to hop in the day one raid. I've put over a day's time into the game already. So my faith in Destiny isn't shaken to a point where I feel that it's time to leave, pack up shop, and not play the game anymore. But my faith in the narrative team certainly is rattled a little, unfortunately, because they had been so consistent, and that faltered. So, a TWAB came out yesterday that detailed the fact that not this current season, but the next season, Season of the Deep, and the 2 seasons after that will pertain to the expansion of the Witness, their background, and the Witness's disciples. And I have to say that, I mean, it seems like at least the narrative will try to recover, and they already had some of these mysteries in mind to solve throughout the year. It just feels like a mistake that they opted to do this not with the expansion, at least in some regard. The fact that we didn't learn what the Veil was, at the very least, I feel like feels amiss, seeing as that's what the entire campaign was about. But I suppose I can reassess my opinion a few months down the line when we've gotten more content, and knowing how previous Destiny expansions have went, we haven't got all of Lightfall's content today. Or this week, rather. Of course, we have the raid coming up next week. And then we also have whatever other stuff they decide to deliver throughout the season. And I look forward to seeing and hoping that what Destiny provides is something to take the confused and disappointed taste out of my mouth. But I think that is a good summary of my thoughts on this expansion. Thank you for listening, and I hope that at the very least my thoughts made sense and did not come across as too convoluted or jumbled. I thank you for, again, listening to this, and I hope that if you want to see more content, you'll stick around and like and subscribe. If not, well, I'll see you out there somewhere.